Nature aquariums are ugly. Nature can be ugly. Do nature aquariums have to be ugly? I mean, that's something that I've been asking myself more and more. And it's something that I used to think I knew the answer for. And I was in that tribe of people that said, no, nature is beautiful. And all the processes are beautiful. Algae, forget about it. Algae is life. Baby fish love algae. As long as it's not choking out the oxygen and causing problems, algae's great. Filtration, it's noisy and man-made, and what's man-made is ugly, right? But at the same time, you can go find ponds anywhere. Ponds form wherever there's water. And you can get an algae-filled ugly pond by, cultural standards pretty much. An algae-filled, mucky, stinky, there's a reason why we are evolved to think, man, that doesn't smell so good, it doesn't look so good, I wouldn't drink it. There is a natural revulsion to things that are putrid or low in oxygen or covered in muck and covered in cyanobacteria. There's also a cultural bias that has evolved over time because we've learned we don't want to get sick, we don't want to go near these types of waters. But nature, of course, has no bias. So what is natural is something that we have strived to understand as a culture, and each of us must understand differently. But something that I'm seeing that I really don't like, that I think is very ugly, is these tribal wars online going on within the nature aquarium community. And what I'm seeing, regardless of if you think nature is ugly and that's just life, and sometimes ugly things produce beautiful outcomes, such as lots of baby fish, or whatever your goal is while you're fish keeping. What is your goal? Do you want lots of fish? Do you want beautiful plants? Do you want a diversity of plants? Do you want one species of plant that does extremely well and takes over a whole tank? Well, in nature, what is 1 cubic foot or 1 cubic meter? In nature, that probably should be almost all one species of plant. When we put that into a little box and we say, here's 20 species or even 5 species of plants and 2 types of wood for hardscape and 8 kinds of fish, that's not natural. The fact that unless you're in a spawning zone, which is a rare occurrence, it happens once a year or a couple times a year, maybe once a month, I don't know, it depends on the fish. But it's not common to see the density we have in our aquariums. And so arguing over what's more natural is kind of a trivial thing. Yet it's also the heart of what our hobby gets at, which is what is beautiful to us, what is skillful to us. What are we replicating? Do we want to replicate the whole thing of nature, or do we want to see as many of those natural processes that take place in a pond? If you were to separate a pond from nature and you could just watch that pond in a little crystal ball, is that what we're trying to do? Do we want to see all the seasons? Do we want to see all the changes? Here's a question for you. Do you want to see the death, the decay? Do you want to see the avalanche? Do you want to see the mudslide that takes out the pond? Do you want to see the earthquake that drains the pond into the bedrock? Or do you want to see the drought that obliterates the pond and kills all the fish, and then for a million years maybe it becomes a salt plain or a basin of just waste? Nature goes through these crazy phases, and nature is brutal, and we are picking and choosing. Even if we have a nature tank, we don't, because you're never going to fit all those natural processes in. Yet, at the same time, you can argue the exact opposite, that everything about your tank is natural, that it all occurs in nature, and that the confines that the tank brings, that humans have imposed, we're a part of nature, and we are thus an extension of that, and anything we're doing is natural, however it unfolds. But I'm seeing people arguing over, I have a Father Fish tank, I have a Walstad tank, I have a Lucas Brett's tank, I have an Alex or Lasagna tank. Okay, I have to thank you guys, though, because I haven't heard a whole lot of people saying I have an Alex tank, because I don't want to claim that I have a type of tank, you guys. I have lots of tanks. I have CO2 running. I have Iwagumi style, which is a Japanese style of artwork in your tank, a simple style of tank. I'd like to get back to that. I have jungly tanks. I happen to have a lot of tanks that we call natural or nature tanks, nature-inspired tanks. And I have a lot of low maintenance tanks, because that was something for the last decade, really, that after aquascaping kind of blew my mind, and the fact that you could keep plants, I realized that I was keeping a garden. And in my aquarium, I didn't want just a garden. I wanted to replicate the beautiful pictures in National Geographic, right? The beautiful scenery. And then I saw tanks that were taking that to another level. They were creating dioramas with little bonsai trees and little versions of entire mountains and landscapes. And sometimes they even had like rocky, craggy hills versus rolling hills versus up close paths with bigger leaves and things in the foreground, and in the background a trail that like optically is just made for one moment, for one picture. And they add sparkling water to it to make it look like all the plants are purling and doing their best, and they actually have like a background that looks like a sunset or clouds even. And I realized that is gross to me. I don't want that level of replication. While I respect it, and I think it takes a lot of skill and knowledge and training and, you know, experience to do these things, that's not what I was looking for. I wanted those beautiful moments from the National Geographic magazine, and I wanted to take a slice from a riverbank and put that in the aquarium. And then I found the biotope aquarium, and that's a whole other thing where, I mean, did you bring the right minerals? Did you bring the right water hardness? Did you have all the plants from the region? Do you have the right insects for the region? I bet you don't. I bet you there's some seasonal birds that come through that lake, or there's some insects, maybe locusts or something, that comes by just once in a while, and you have not replicated that. So there's still limits to that, but you can do as much as you want. You know, you can take it as far kind of as you want to go, but most people don't even take their aquarium to a place where they have seasons, where there's a cold season for you dedicate 4 months to the fact that your tanks are going to have a cool down. Your tanks are not going to have as much light. Your tanks are not going to have as much fertilizer. Or maybe there's a period where it spikes and you're replicating the spawn and a bloom, and there's pollen, and there's all sorts of, in the fall too, there's windstorms, and you're throwing sticks and leaves and branches in your tank. Do we do that in a nature tank? I mean, most people definitely not. Maybe there's some of you out there who do. But I want to bring all this up to point out the kind of silly point of arguing about all this. Because at the end of the day, even if you want to create a biotope, you're never going to reach that ultimate goal. Even if you have a whole exhibit or a wing in a zoo, you don't have like the watershed. You don't have the connectivity to other regions. The weather changes. You don't have foreign invading species and different changes that happen when the environment naturally changes or unnaturally changes, or when humans move in and develop, or when a mudslide or avalanche or earthquake or a very rare occurrence happens, like I said, and it resets everything and it's not even water anymore. Or maybe it goes from one of those pristine, incredible scenes that we capture and we deem as a society, as a human race even, we deem to be breathtaking, spellbinding. And it's not a miniature version of something. It's beauty right there in the arrangement. And you could say that like flower arrangements are like this, or miniature wabi-kuzas or wabi-sabi arrangements of plates and things where they shatter a plate and put it back together. That these are all kind of practices of looking at the thing that's supposed to be at that scale, whether it's man-made or it's a natural scene, but we're taking it for the beauty that it is. And you can look at something like a pine cone or a fern that has incredible geometry, stuff that we call sacred geometry these days, but really just repetitive fractal and incredible complex patterns that the human eye sees, and we see them all over the world. But really, we're good at finding patterns as humans. We need to find patterns. We need to find symmetry in faces, and to tell us, is that a good person to pair up with for life? Is it ideal symmetry? No. It's close though, you know, and a lot of people if you give them ideal symmetry in the mirror, they may say that, you know, that's more attractive or less attractive. But the average person in studies, you know, they like symmetry, but not perfect symmetry. And I find that interesting because in nature, a lot of times our aquascapes are symmetrical, or they're really asymmetrical, so much so that it has to look intentional, because we deem these moments and we deem these aquascapes or designs as beautiful or something that needs to be beautiful, and we show off our skill and our understanding of nature in these spaces. And so what I want to challenge everybody to think about is, what are you trying to replicate? Are you just trying to breed fish? Do you just care about, you know, replicating those natural processes? Do you care about the strict biological urge of the fish to reproduce? Or for that matter, the chemical signals that induce spawning in that fish? You could just use, you know, hormones and things like that and get a fish to spawn and maximize efficiency and the growth, and you can figure out the diet of how many, you know, how much protein, how much fat, how much carb, you know, what you need to balance their diet with when it changes as they're growing up, and you could maximize all that, and maybe you're trying to maximize profit. I'm not arguing that any one of these is right or wrong. I'm saying these are pursuits that are all going on in the aquarium hobby, and I am a little lost personally of what my pursuit is of. I love seeing a sampler of nature. I don't tell myself that it's a replication of nature, but I do tell myself that it is a teacher of nature, and that I may find a natural event or natural phenomena occurring in my aquarium that I didn't know occurred out in nature, or that occurred period, or an interaction, especially when I keep things in a biotope where I have a slice close or approximating something that would be found in nature, and you see two species interacting. You see one fish missing some food and another one coming down and cleaning it up. You know, things like that. Fish raising their babies. All these things to me are so joyful and beautiful. And the aquascape, I'm also torn on what I find beautiful, because when I stop and I think about a nature aquarium, I think it's kind of ugly from a human aesthetic of what should be created. What is intentional beauty? Is it symmetrical? Is it this or that? All those things need to be thrown out for nature. And I think what we, at the end of the day, here's the payoff for the video, is that rarity is the biggest danger in the aquarium hobby, and it's the biggest source of beauty and wonder. So whether it's a rare occurrence of, you know, your aquarium crashed, that is an avalanche, that is an earthquake, that is a reset of the world, and maybe you understand the natural processes that are going on and what must go on to recover. And then when you go to a lake, you understand that over the eons, maybe that's happened dozens of times, and the animals have found a way to survive. Or maybe they didn't, maybe they had to come back, and you're marveling at what has come back, going to visit something like Mount St. Helens eruption site in Washington State where I live, and seeing the lakes and how they are rebounding once they were literally obliterated by a volcano. Or maybe, you know, the rarity is that you got something to spawn, and that's a once in its lifetime, or maybe a couple times in its lifetime goal, and maybe that's a difficult fish to spawn, especially in the confines of a human, you know, human defined little glass box, and whatever it is that we're putting in. But I think that those rare occurrences are what are special. Whether it's bad or good, I think those are what give us the excitement. Those are what we strive for in whatever aspect it is we like of fish keeping. But I want to tell you guys, I want to tell everybody that I don't have a way or an opinion that I think is right of ways to keep fish. I think there's lots of great ways, and I think we really need to stop putting down people's ways. You know, I was friends with Lou Foxwell, Father Fish. I still chat with him, but you know, his way, the Father Fish way, his followers are far more vehement that it has to be a certain this, you have to do this, and then that, and then this is not his way, this is his way. He would never do a water change. You know, this, whatever that they say, it's more laid out by the second generation hearing it and putting it together and defining it. And the same is true with the Walstad method. These are things that I know for a fact, Lou anyways, Father Fish, he had a more wishy-washy way of talking about it 5 years ago even. You know, he had a deep substrate or a deep sand bed method, which other people have done too. And then other people started dubbing the father fish method, and he kind of ran with it. It worked. He's also has a channel. He's trying to provide for himself. He's trying to encourage people to love nature and the hobby. And that's true whether you're watching someone like Aquarium Co-op who says, you know, enjoy nature daily. What part of nature? You're selling a bunch of chemicals and synthetic stuff, you know? Well, they also sell fish and have a fish store, and they also encourage people to get into the hobby and then get into the nature aquariums and then get into going out into nature and taking pictures. So I don't want to put down anybody who's encouraging a well-meaning and curious pursuit of the hobby, but I do want to encourage everybody to celebrate those rare occurrences. And as you are new to the hobby, you will have more rare occurrences because everything's new, everything's novel and exciting. And that's the magic of getting into something new, like a hobby. But as you have been in the hobby for a while, the new things or the times that something unexpected happens or fish cross species, maybe you think that's an abomination, but it is something new and it's something that gets attention, right? So I say, let's bring attention to these new and rare experiences when they happen. And let's celebrate them. And, you know, if it's something that goes against your moral or your ethic within the hobby, I understand not celebrating it or not wanting more hybrid or GMO fish if you're against that thing or whatnot. But if you're spawning fish and it's a hard fish to spawn, celebrate that rare spawn. Celebrate the fact that you messed up, a tank crashed, understand what you did wrong. If a tank flowers and a beautiful bucephalandra does well, celebrate that, take a picture. I just want to encourage you guys to remember the beauty in the hobby, even if you can't define it, even if your mind's changing and you're at a stage in the hobby where you're kind of losing track of what you even like or what is even beautiful anymore. And I think I'm coming around, and every 5 or 10 years for the last 30 years since I was a little 7-year-old kid or whatever, this has happened. You know, this has happened, like these big moments in my life, and they kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I just had to just share this moment with you guys. And I want to thank you all in this community for being so positive, so compassionate, so understanding, and just being curious and wanting to learn and wanting to celebrate these rare moments in nature, in mechanics, in physics, in science, in our time together on this earth. Thank you so much. You guys make it possible. Liking, sharing, you know, the rarities these days that make this channel possible. I just appreciate you guys so much. Have a wonderful day and celebrate the unusual and rare moments. I'll see you next time on FISHTORY. Bye.